Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Mike Maddock, who is an entrepreneur, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and a CEO coach. Mike, welcome to the program.
Michael, it's nice to be here. Thanks.
So it sounds like you get about 1 hour of sleep per night, and no, I'm just kidding. But I want to jump into everything that you do, but I always like to start off with, tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. What has that been like up to this point in your career?
Well, there's a saying in the Midwest that when you plant corn, you get corn, and my parents figured out pretty early in my life that isn't always true. Both my parents were great students, Notre Dame, St. Mary's. My dad was a debate scholar, and by the age of 5, they realized I was nothing like them. Mm-hmm. So I was all over the place, class clown, talked too much, doodled too much, got into too much trouble. But thankfully, my folks, just encouraged me to be who I was. I started working when I was very young, and serendipitously, I worked for a lot of entrepreneurs. Every job that I had through college was with an entrepreneur, and that got me going, starting my own little businesses. I had a couple businesses in college. A year out of school, I started a company called Maddock Douglas, which is an innovation consulting firm out of Chicago. And I've spent the better part of 3 decades helping disruptors launch new products, services, and business models. And along the way, I've started 5 other companies. So, I tell my friends I'm a really good starter and a lousy finisher.
But I'll bet you have people on your team that are the finishers and that allow you to be the idea, as you call it, the idea monkey, and then let other people kind of come behind you and go, okay, now here's what we need to do. So is that the case with you? Yeah,
like most writers, coaches, etc., I've spent most of my time working on myself. Yeah. So one of the things I've been very curious about is teams and who you surround yourself with. So you referenced Free the Idea Monkey, which was a book I wrote 10 years ago about the tension between Walt Disney and Roy Disney. And just after writing that book, I tested our executive team. And now this is a team that had taken our company from 3 million to 5 million to 15 million in revenue inside of 3 years, so it was a really good team. And I was stunned to find out that we all tested very similarly. In other words, I had surrounded myself with people, even though their titles were things like COO or head of sales or whatever, under pressure, they responded an awful lot like me, which is to say that their go-to punch was to blow things up and start over instead of, executing with precision. So, and I was really shocked by that. I thought we had a very dynamic, balanced team, but what I discovered was we tend to surround ourselves with people like us, whether we know it or not, and that gets companies into a lot of trouble. So we were really good at starting things and disrupting things, but we weren't very good at execution and scaling once we had an idea that worked. So, so that's something I thought an awful lot about, written an awful lot about, started companies around. And I think most leaders struggle with that tension.
Yep. And what you just described was a blind spot, because sometimes it's been said you can't see the forest for the trees because you're too close. So in an organization or small team, large team, whatever, what do you recommend people do to make sure that they don't have a blind spot, or when they do, not if, but when they do, how to discover it and then what to do about it?
Yeah, my favorite saying is you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. Which is to say that the longer you've been working on an industry, a challenge, a team, a relationship, the more of an expert you become. So I promise you, if you're considered an expert in your industry, your expertise creates blind spots. You know what works, you know how to get paid, you know what the boss likes, you know what's legal, you know what you can afford, you know. And the more you know, the harder it is for you to see possibility when it's walking right in front of you. And every industry, every leader has this challenge. So, metaphorically, remember teeter-totters or seesaws as a kid? And the best seesaw buddy or teeter-totter buddy weighed about the same as you did. So you could strike that balance where you just floated in the air and you could blast each other off. That's a good analogy for strengths. You want someone on your team that has equal and opposite strengths. And so, the great visionary has a great operator. The challenge with that is that under pressure, you act in opposite ways. You react in opposite ways. So it causes a tremendous amount of tension. So, a piece of advice I will give my children if they want to start their own business or any entrepreneur is make sure your partner sees the world in an opposite way, and make sure that you look at that opposite as an insurance policy against your blind spot. So that's where I would start. And then from there, if you look at an executive team, there are actually at least 6 different roles on an executive team that balance each other out, that should be filled if you want to scale.
You talk about balance there, and let's go back to that teeter-totter example. And so I think that balance is such a key point in success, life, all of that. But you could have that perfect partner that provides balance, but if you're not in flow, it won't matter, because that same person on the other end of the teeter-totter that weighs about the same, they could, when they get down to the bottom, not kick back up so that you go down and they go up. They could just stay there and keep you up top. Or they could kick with about 30% force and get part of the way up. So there has to be that flow. So finding that balance is huge, but then maintaining and optimizing the balance for flow, I think, is a part of that secret sauce.
I totally agree. And a way to think about that is we talked before we jumped on here about design thinking, and phrases within design thinking are convergent and divergent thinkers. Divergent thinkers are idea monkeys. They put together lots of ideas. A joke for a divergent thinker is how many innovators does it take to screw in a light bulb? Does it have to be a light bulb? There's always another possibility. Convergent thinkers focus on one thing. They focus on a solution, a straight line to get from here to there. So within design thinking, the balance is converge, diverge, converge, diverge, converge, and it's almost like a dance. The good news is there are all kinds of systems and frameworks that allow a divergent thinker and a convergent thinker to dance together. But in order for that to happen, there has to be trust. There has to be respect for that opposite, that partner. And so often it's hard to strike that balance. So, that's where the magic is. And I look at companies that started by accident with partners that balanced each other out and scaled brilliantly. That's typically not what happens. I sat on the board of advisors, the innovation board of advisors for General Electric, for example. And I remember going to 30 Rock in New York and going all the way up to the top floor and walking down this long hallway filled with black and white pictures of middle-aged white guys that had run General Electric. And one of the other advisors said, "Hey, you know why we're here, right?" And I said, "Yeah, we're here to help GE innovate." And he goes, "Yeah, but the real reason we're here is because it's been 13 years since this company has launched a new product or service or business model, even though they have thousands and thousands of patents." Now, that's Thomas Edison's company. And what had happened was Jack Welch, a great operator, an amazing convergent thinker, had trained that company to mitigate risk to Six Sigma to the point where they no longer felt comfortable being divergent. And that's the other end of the spectrum when you have operators who typically scale companies with too much control. The organization forgets how to imagine new ideas and think differently.
Yep. Well, that example about the patents and GE and not launching products in 13 years reminds me of the old saying, knowledge is power. And people are like, yeah, knowledge is power. Knowledge is potential power. You've got to put it into action. Well, patents are power. Yeah, no, you got to do something with them and, do more than just talk around the boardroom or do more than go, yay, we got our patent here and, here's this new, technology or this new idea. What are we going to do to launch and do and implement? So that kind of ties into your talking and teaching about wisdom versus intelligence. So what do you do when you're working with a client that, maybe using that analogy of knowledge and power and, GE's patents, what do you do about teaching someone to go, you need to have that knowledge, that wisdom, but the intelligence comes in where we got to do something with it and get it into action?
Yeah, so I think intelligence is learning from your own mistakes, and intelligence is painful. It leaves lumps, bruises. It's hard getting smart. Wisdom is sharing mistakes is a generous act of humility when someone who's already made the mistake says, look, here was my experience. Here's what I learned from it. And I hope this is helpful. So I think infusing wisdom to counter the intelligence of a company is really, really powerful. And so within brainstorming and research, et cetera, bringing in people from parallel industries who are considered experts, who have solved the same type of challenge in a parallel, non-competitive way, is a great way for people that are the smartest, most sincere, most righteous thinkers in a company to go, oh, maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way. And the way that I've made that happen in an organization, I started a company called Flourish Forums, and it is a hyper-curated group of peers who meet virtually once a month, and there's 6 different seats. There's the operator, the strategist, the rainmaker, the visionary, the tech futurist, and the orchestrator. Everybody in those seats is a C-suite member. They all have a P&L. They're all peers. But what happens is when someone says, I have this issue, here's what the issue is, I need you to help me solve it. What happens is those 5 other seats see it differently. They say, wow, I hear your issue, but I think the issue might be this. Yeah. And here are my experiences with that issue. And here's my big takeaway from those experiences. And what that allows those leaders to do is go, holy crap, maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Here's when you're sitting inside the jar. When you keep trying to solve the same problem over and over and over again, and you can't fix it, well, you're probably working on the wrong problem.
Yeah. So it's like that old analogy of the blind guys from India touching the elephant going, this is a wall. And they're like, no, this is a hose. No, this is a tree. Well, they're all right based on their individual perspective. But when you step back and you look at it together as a whole, that's the power of those masterminds, those forums. I love the Flourish Forum. That's such a neat word, the play on words. I just think that is spectacular. So, Mike, it's been a great pleasure talking with you here today. What's the best way someone could reach out, learn more about what you do, and pick up some knowledge from you?
Yeah, so Mike at MaddockDouglas.com or Mike at Flourish Forums, plural, flourishforums.com. I'm happy to help any way I can. So, Mike, I appreciate you spending a few moments chatting with me.
Oh, excellent. I really appreciate you coming on, Mike. Have a great day.
Okay, thanks.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.